Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Social Connection podcast, where I've been excited for this for about a couple of weeks since we invited KP, aka, Kalpesh Patel, aka KP. Hi, Kalpesh. How are you?
I'm very good, Atish. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
No problem. I'm going to give a little intro, and then I'll let you you can inform all of our listeners of who Kalpesh Patel is, and we'll take it from there. So KP, founder of Media 36, and you pretty much fly the flag of South Croydon a lot on your social media.
Absolutely, 100%.
All right. First of all, thank you for accepting our invite. I think your ethos and getting like-minded entrepreneurs and founders to your community is exactly what our podcast is about. And I thought you tick all the boxes when it comes to having the guest and why our listeners are going to tune in to listen to KP. So give us a little take on how business life started. What's your background? Most of our listeners won't know, but you are the owner of Media 36, which is an umbrella for the Asian Wealth magazine and the Founders Club. If you give us a bit of take what you're all about, then we'll get into the podcast.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thanks very much, Ashish. I mean, you know, it's I've done a few of these podcasts before, and it's always quite funny because we always, when you say the word entrepreneur, it's thrown around a lot, and you know, I always think to myself, where does that actually come from? Because we don't go to school thinking about, I'm going to become an entrepreneur, right? You know, when you're at school, they teach you very, very different things. And I think most people who are entrepreneurs kind of fall into it. And I think before I guess I became an entrepreneur, you know, I guess for me, it was very much, I was a salesman. And I think a lot of salespeople turn into entrepreneurs, right? So, and again, you don't go to school for sales, you know, you kind of, everyone who I know who's in sales has fallen into sales. You know, nobody goes to school and says, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to become a salesman. You know, nobody does that. So I used to say, when we just had the magazine, I used to say, I'm nothing but a glorified salesman. I'm a salesman turned publisher, you know, and that's essentially what it was. I mean, look, just going back, you know, initially, I've always been a creative person. My brother, who is also my business partner, he's always been the analytical, the strategic one. I've always been the emotional one. I've always been the creative one. You know, so for me, it was very much, I wanted to find something in that route. After university, I went through and I became a business partner in an events company, which then I sold my share, and then I went into publishing. So that was really where I cut my teeth in the media world. You know, that's something that I really, really enjoyed. And I went into publishing because I had that kind of creative flair. From then, I used to work for a very big publishing company, but focused on a very niche part of the world, which is oil and gas. Well, a niche part of oil and gas, really. I left there and I set up my own company. And that's, as for you, me, a lot of your listeners, you know, will be, you know, the biggest risk. That is, you know, the make or break when you kind of decide to launch your own business.
What triggered you to think about starting your own business then?
I think, you know what it was? That's a great question. And I'll tell you exactly for me when it was. When I used to work for this publishing company, I won't name it, but you know, we used to probably make about $1.5 million in revenue. So it's quite small in that sense of what it was. But there was only 6 of us working on this magazine, and it was making $1.5 million. And then at the end of the year, the CMO came to me and he said, KP, look, you know, we've made a loss this year, so we need to do this and we need to do that. And I was shocked. I said, hold on, wait a minute. How can we have made a loss? You know, I know that because I was head of sales, so I know that we made, you know, $1.5 million in sales, and there was only 6 of us in that whole making the publication. I know I didn't get paid that much, and I know my team didn't get paid that much. So where did that $1.5 million go, right? But you know what happens is that when you're working for these big corporations, they will allocate 70 grand from that into marketing. You know, we're not the only 6 people that the mouths that needed to be fed. It was obviously high level as well. And that's when I thought to myself, you know what, hold on, if I ran my own company and I made $1.5 million, imagine the kind of profit margins that we would have, right? And that was the kind of initial trigger point where I thought to myself, that's, you know, that's where I've got to make the move.
So it was the actual work itself is something that you always wanted to carry on, but that wasn't your trigger point, because a lot of trigger points are, okay, I've had enough of this place, or there's a rollout of the type of people that I'm working with that I just can't get along with. But then you're saying it's more of the finance, and I want the piece of the pie, pretty much.
Yeah, it's not so much the piece of the pie. And I think, look, I'd be lying if I said money wasn't or financial gain wasn't a key part of anyone's decision. I think when you're starting out in business, you do make that based on a financial decision, because you say, well, look, if I'm getting paid this much, and if I set up my own company, I can make this much. So I think at the beginning, there is always an element of that. So anyone who says, no, that's not, you know, and I think everyone also goes into it because they say, right, we want financial freedom. I don't want to work for this person because I'm never going to get that kind of money, or, you know, I want to retire at 40 or 50 and I'm never going to make that kind of money. So financial aspect is always going to be one, but mine wasn't actually just immediately lining my own pockets. I couldn't understand why we were making a loss. Well, I did understand, but I didn't agree with it, that if we're making, you know, and so as opposed to at the end of the year, as opposed to being congratulated, there was sadness around the table because the directors were coming and saying, oh, we've made a loss this year. But hold on, we haven't made a loss. You know, our team has made profit. We know that we've made money. But, you know, so that was the initial trigger point for me.
Okay. So did you go straight into publishing the Asian Wealth magazine straight immediately after that then?
No, absolutely not. No, I launched as again, a lot of people do, I left the oil and gas magazine and I set up my own oil and gas magazine because I knew what kind of money could be made. And I knew if we made even kind of half of that, we'd still be making money, right? So I launched that. The reality was, actually, wasn't, you know, it's not the most sexiest of industries, you know, and I didn't want to put all my eggs in one basket. But as
it makes a sensible move for you to go that way, because this is what you've known for the last few years, I presume.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to carry on in media and publishing. So that was the initial transition. And I set up the company, I launched the magazine. Very, very quickly, I realized actually, it's making money, which is great, but I'm not hugely passionate about it. I'm not hugely interested in this market. What I did do was, at the start of every year, as an entrepreneur and as a business person, I would subscribe to a whole list of magazines, you know, business magazines. But everything that I was coming across was very American, very, you know, Forbes, Fortune, Entrepreneur, Inc. You know, they're all great titles, but there would be a transatlantic disconnect, right? So you would say, you know, Atish ran his business like a quarterback on the field. So we'd get it, but all of a sudden we wouldn't get it. Okay. So off the back of that, obviously, then you know, we ended up launching Asian Wealth. I didn't want to call it Asian Wealth. I wanted to call it Asian Entrepreneur. You know, but the American title Entrepreneur had applied for the rights in Europe, and it was just becoming messy. So we ended up with Asian Wealth. And that was our niche, to really focus on the British Asian market. But with the core DNA of business and entrepreneurship. That's really what it was. The connotation of wealth was very much about wealth of knowledge and wealth of enterprise, wealth of experience. It was never supposed to be a wealth of financial wealth. But naturally, from the outside, it's like the Sunday Times. Yeah, it's the Sunday Times rich list. You know, when you see it, you're intrigued. And that was the reason why people opened it up. And when you started reading, it was very different.
What was the biggest hurdle launching this new field? And I presume it was a whole new game for you, right? Because you've come from a different, well, you were still in marketing, but I guess your name wasn't out there as much as it is now. But
Yeah.
How were you approaching people, or what was the biggest hurdle when you started?
I think the biggest hurdle initially was very much around, I guess, getting the clients on board, because when we launched it 10 years ago, there was Asian media in the market, but very much tabloid. Where my expertise has always been is very much in brand building, in brand positioning, in marketing. That's where my degree is in, right? So, and I've very much always had a passion for design. So I know how to make something and position something in a certain part of the market. And I know that's what I'm good at. And that's what we did with Asian World. So initially, and to be fair, initially I got the whole market wrong. When we first launched, I thought to myself that our advertisers would be Mr. Patel's accountancy down the road. That's who I thought our clients would be. But very quickly, we realized that because of the way that the magazine looked and it felt and it was designed, it started falling on the radar of premium luxury brands who naturally looked at it and said, Asian wealth must be for wealthy Asians. So, let's have a look at this. So very quickly, we picked up some great, household name premium partners. So over the first 6 months, we, organically restructured, redesigned, reorganized to make sure that we then, fulfilled that's where we wanted to be positioned. So as opposed to working with mid-tier FMCG brands, we were now looking at premium luxury brands, so we tailored our product to fit in with that market because that's where we wanted to be.
So it's a more of a reactive response that you had instead of something sticking to your guns and not going for that small account and independent, I presume.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this is something that I was told many, many, many years ago, is that no matter which type of company that you have, there has to always be growth, and I could give you 101 examples, that is, and one off the top of my head would be Nokia. Remember the old Nokia phones, and if you don't keep up with it, even BlackBerry, if you don't keep up with the market, no matter how big you are, it will change. So I think there always has to be that organic growth.
And in evolving as a brand as well.
Of course, absolutely, yeah.
My take with speaking to a lot of entrepreneurs is actually looking at the business as a human being. Would you be the same person as you were 10 years ago? Are we wearing the same clothes as we were 5 years ago? And I always, when I kind of go back to black and white and kind of go like, okay, this is what I visualize. If the business is not evolving, then, just before this recording, we talked about why I got into podcasting, just because we don't want to leave a stone unturned. And this is like Blockbuster and stuff, right? I mean, they didn't jump on the stream, and look where they are now. Toys R Us didn't do what Amazon did. And yeah, I'm 100% with evolving, but then this is where your success comes from.
Absolutely. And I think, and look, let's call it what it is, right? Sometimes it can be scary because, as humans, we're creatures of habit. We don't want to change. We're very comfortable, and especially if it works. If things are working, we don't want to change. But you have to, and I'm equally as, as passionate about explaining this to my team, my internal team as well, because what we do, but everyone, not just externally, but internally, it has to constantly keep evolving and moving forward, for sure. And that's why we launched the Founders Club. Yeah.
I was just about to say that. So what was the thinking behind that? Because I think I felt it came in at the right time for us. But what was your thinking behind that? Is stuff changing in marketing, or you wanted a new challenge?
No, it was very much directionally led through the market, to be fair, because, look, Asian Wealth will be 10 years this year, but over the last 5 years, it's been immensely difficult, and, I'm not here to sugarcoat it or lie about it. It has been very, very hard. And I think anyone in media who says anything different is categorically lying. I mean, you just have to pick up any magazine these days and see, how thin they've become. Because the reality is, look, everyone over the last 5 years, our clients, as I love them all, and they were saying, look, we love working with you, we want to carry on, but we're putting a lot more time, money, and effort into digital, which made absolute sense. So in 2018, we dropped the print edition of the magazine, moved everything online. And we've done a lot of research before we did that. And this is something really interesting, which we found, Atish, was, if you ask 10 people, do you prefer print or digital? 9 people will say print, because we instinctively, we love the feeling of something tangible, but if you ask the same 9 people, when was the last time you read an article or an interview or something, in a magazine or a paper? It's only 1 or 2. So we're in love with this ideology of waking up late on a Sunday morning, slowly sipping our coffee and turning pages, where the reality is we're still waking up early, we're wolfing down our coffee, and we're scrolling up and down with our thumb. That's the reality of it. So that's where it was. And I think from that, but what we had is this wonderful pool of people. We had this, over the last 10 years, we built this amazing pool of entrepreneurs and business leaders and, professionals. And so Sonny and I, my brother and business partner, we said, okay, well, how do we utilize that? How do we help that? As I'm pretty sure you have, right? You followed us over the years, and you'll see on our social media that we know how to throw parties, we know how to have a good time, which is great. But then what's after that? What happens after you go home and you close the door? And it's and I think that's what it was, is actually, we have a good time, sure, we do that, but what's the bigger picture? And that's why we set up the club, to say very much is that how do we and how do we help our members grow from entrepreneurs to business leaders? How do we help them exit their business? How do we help them become better humans? All of that, and especially enjoy that whole process, enjoy that journey. It's hugely important.
Right. So you're getting to, from your journey, to be fair, you're starting to collate a lot of decent people, good business owners. What's your take on what's the difference between not a bad entrepreneur, but an average entrepreneur, but then the entrepreneur that really scales up, that's really doing well, not in terms of just finances, but pretty much has got the balance. Where you've met a few entrepreneurs, where have you seen that? Do you know what? He's doing something different, or she's doing something different that I don't see often. What is that?
That's a really good question, because I've come across, and I still come across, amazing entrepreneurs. Every entrepreneur has the same essence. They all have the same goals. They all have the same beliefs. What I think what makes a difference between some and others is, so number one, I tell you, every successful entrepreneur that I've met, when I say successful, I'm talking about people who have exited their business at 10 times, I'm talking about people who have hugely scaled their business, and it's always a couple of things. And number one, it is very much having a goal, having that, we're knowing where the finish line is, right? Because, and this is something which a lot of entrepreneurs fail to do, which is they get into business and they say, right, I'm going to sell a mug. I'm the best at making mugs. I'm going to go and sell mugs. I'm going to make the best mugs in the world. I'm going to sell them. And then in month 1, I'll sell 100 mugs. In month 2, I'll sell 200 mugs. And it will keep going. And then at some point, it will plateau. And I'm selling 1,000 mugs a month, and I'm just every month. And I'm living a good life, right? I'm going out here and I'm meeting my friends and this, that. And, and But then, and that's where a lot of businesses get to. Unless you want it to become, and what that is, that's a lifestyle business.
Lifestyle, yeah.
That's a lifestyle business. So, and if that's what the objective is, then that's fine. But a lot of businesses organically become lifestyle business. Just walk down the high street. Walk down the high street and look right and left and look at the businesses that have been there for years and years and years. We all know them, right? Yeah. And those are lifestyle businesses, because those are the ones that have got to a certain point and they stay there. And that's okay if that's what the people want. But the people who have, done tremendously well is they set a goal. They said, right, this is where I want to exit my business, or this is where I want the business to get to, and then I'll make a decision. Not everyone's at the beginning says, right, I'm going to exit the business at that 100 million. And that's what it is. Sometimes businesses, I know entrepreneurs who have got to a certain point and they've said, the initial plan was to exit at 50 million or 100 million. But now where we are, actually, I've decided to, change the plan, and I, haven't exited, but I've pivoted the business. So I've done this, or I've done that, So, and equally that also changes, because some people don't want to exit. There is a succession plan. Some people have children and they want to leave their businesses to the children. But the planning is one. And number two is scalability. Is that we have one of our patron members in our club, and he exited his business for about 260 million a few years ago. And, he's amazing. He's a mentor of mine. And when he looks at a business, there's only one thing he's looking at: scalability. Can this business be scaled? And
scalability can be daunting, though, can't it?
It can be, yeah. And that you just said something really, really interesting, right? Because I've said this before to a few people, that somebody told me years ago that if there is a very, very, very small chance of success, most people won't even try. That's the reality of it, right? So, and because of that, so if you look at it, and so that's the kind of the core essence behind scalability. Any business in its purest form, and if it is good, it can scale. I mean, you look at businesses like Amazon, I was just thinking recently of even product business. If you look at things like Gymshark, if you look at Amazon, if you look at, some of these businesses that have scaled globally, and you think to yourself, how the hell did they do that?
Well, it's the time and how rapid they have grown as well.
It's the time, it's the product, it's the know-how, because there are some people, look, Gymshark, right? I forget his name, Ben something, right? So, he's not the first one to come out with that kind of product.
Gym clothes, yeah.
Yeah, he's not the first, and he's not going to be
reinventing the wheel.
No, but what made him go that far and nobody else? So actually, that's what makes it. It's the drive, it's the people around you, it's the vision that you have, it's how you so there's all these kind of bits and pieces that kind of go into it, for sure.
Brilliant. It's good that you say that, because in the back of every kind of entrepreneur's mind is, right, how do I avoid, or how do I stop procrastinating? Because both of us have jobs that are easy to do, but we never do it. And to delegate that is where I've found how I've done small scaling, but how I've kind of seen my business's success. Because if I'm not doing it, it's not the day, it's not the time, it's because I don't want to do it. And I believe in delegation. And if it's done and it's come off and somebody else is doing it and I've paid for that, it's a big weight off my chest. So I'm 100% for that. Just going by these brands that you've just talked about, and you've talked about, so you've just said Amazon and you've said Gymshark, but all of us know who the owners are. I think before maybe digital marketing, social media, we weren't aware of who exactly owns it, or if there's huge CEOs. What's your take on personal branding when it comes to businesses now? Because I'm going to be honest, I followed you on Instagram, and only on the basis that I like this guy's flow. I like the images that are coming from there, the message you're giving, your stories were were something I liked and they were relevant, and I felt the need was to press that follow button. But where do you see the importance of personal branding, and just give us an example of where it's took you, to where you are right now?
Yeah, again, it's a great point, and it's a great question as well, because I think the world that we live in today is a very different one from 10 years ago, and especially in business. Personal branding has become so important in any and every business, right? That it's become essential, and it's become because it makes it human. It makes it human these days. We're living in such a digital world that you cannot really build loyalty and a relationship with a brand unless you feel connected to a human face, essentially, and that's why when you see certain people, when you see certain faces behind businesses, you automatically become attuned to that brand, and if you look at some of the biggest brands today, and a lot of people, they're actually pushing their own brands, and I equally, within our club, within the Founders Club, we've got a bunch of companies, and people are quite weary of putting themselves, because they compare their businesses to huge giants. They say, okay, well, this brand hasn't done it, that brand hasn't done it, and that's because those brands are run by board members, and they're owned by private equity companies, and it's very different. But when it's your baby, I see that actually there is nothing to lose by putting a face to a brand, and that is where most businesses, I think, that actually really need to be going as well.
I get my biggest issue on dealing with clients, and certain clients don't need to maybe show the behind the scenes or the face of the brand. Every business is different. However, some of them, my biggest hurdle is, right, you've got to turn the camera the other way around. And the biggest issue that people say is, well, I'm conscious of what people think, maybe what I look like, the way I talk. When I started this business, I ticked all those boxes. Do you think you've got to kind of take the psychological aspect and kind of say, I don't care what people think? But then, I think you're going to say yes. But what's the process of getting to being an introvert and how to get out there? What's the process, or what have you done that kind of will help our listeners to get out there? Because I know for a fact, when I'm doing stories and I'm asking on the polls, would you do this? People say I would love to, but there's something stopping me. What would be your kind of encouragement of this is what you should be doing? Because we all know it's working.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, and I think on that, Atish, is we're all human. And I don't think there is any person who would turn around and say, oh, no, it comes naturally to me. I would never believe that. We're all human. We all have insecurities. We all, balance and juggle those insecurities, whatever it may be, But I think there is an essence of confidence building. And I think, look, I have a 15-year-old daughter, and my daughter, again, for those listeners who have teenage kids, they will know that actually everything is about image, and now it's amplified on social media, right? The way you look, the way you talk, the way you do this, the way you do that, even today, I will, even when we do photo shoots and things like that, and I've come across people, and I'm sure you have as well, right? So you'll take a picture and that person wants to see it 10 times, and no, can you take it again? You take it again, there's always, and that all stems from insecurities. Look, the reality is no one's ever going to be able to get over that. They're never ever going to be able to, become. So if all of your listeners, if they're saying, okay, how do I get over it? You're not going to be able to get over it. But what you can do is you can make it better. you can make it easier. You can make it easier by practicing. You can make it easier by, it's very easy for me to sit here or stand here and say, you know what, just get over it. Just push, you know, but it's a lot harder.
That doesn't work. Yeah.
It's a lot harder. It's a lot harder to do. What you have to do is you have to try and figure out what works for you. In a sense of, if you are not comfortable doing it by yourself, try and do it with other people, you know, to start off with. If you're not comfortable with putting your face on it, try just doing a voiceover to start off with, you know. So there's all these little things that you can do, which will make it, once you've started filming and started putting your voice on it, and you've done that 20 times, guess what? Organically, you'll feel a little bit more comfortable by turning the camera around and actually putting your face on it, you know? And it's just those tiny steps that there's no magic, you know, wand here. You can't click your fingers and all of a sudden it's gonna happen, you know? It's very much baby steps that it has to, but you have to want to do it as well. You have to understand that actually this is the way it has to move forward. I know people equally who they are being pushed by their PR companies, then they're being pushed by, you know, have you heard of the furniture company, DFS?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so the founder of DFS, you know, is a lovely guy. We've known him for many years. You would have never seen an interview with him in Asian Wealth or, you know, because, you know, he's a lovely guy and he's a phenomenal entrepreneur. I mean, this guy, he founded DFS, launched it into his huge brand. You know, he sold it, and the people that he sold it to didn't know what they were doing, so it went into liquidation. He bought back 6 of the big stores, you know, and then raised it again. So, you know, I mean, this guy made money, and then he sold it and then made money again off it, you know. But this guy, you know, would come to some of our events, and he's an absolute lovely person, but he would never do an interview. Never. He'd come to our events and, you know, we'd have lovely coffees together, but never do an interview. And because he said, you know what it is, he goes, I hate it, and my PR company hates it because they push me towards doing these things, but I cringe. Yeah. So, you know, there's most people, what do they say? I think there's, what is it? 77% of the world are scared of public speaking. That's one of the biggest fears. Do you know, and yeah, excuse me, I've got the stats incorrect, but I'm pretty, you know, that is pretty high, you know.
No, I'm massive for that. I when I was back when I had my own estate agency, I had a meltdown because of a presentation that I was doing for people that I've never met, and it was it was more of a panic attack. And then I think what the worst thing what I did was leave a massive gap to the next one because of the fear and the insecurity. And only recently now, talking to, I'm trying to just kind of saying, well, let's just do it. Book me in for this, and I'll worry about it the night before, but I don't. I worry about it a week before, and it just gets. But there's certain mechanisms that I do now, and I've got to be honest. Zoom calls for me kind of got me into, because I've only started to talk over the last 2 years, and it's these mechanisms that sometimes what I do is I speak to 50 people on Zoom, and then when I physically get out there, which I have started to, it kind of absorbs the fear and stuff. So yeah, I'm a perfect example of kind of having the fear, but the issue I had was leaving it. I mean, I left it for about 5, 6, probably 7 years. But it gets the weight carries on. That's the problem.
Do you find the same thing now that, like you said, obviously you do a lot of Zoom calls, but then when you are in an environment where you're with a lot of people, I know you're coming to the networking, you know, thing tomorrow with us for the club. When you're in that kind of environment, do you feel a lot more confident because you've had this experience over Zoom and you're, you know, over the, like you said, over the last 2 years, or actually do you still find there's quite a big difference between being personally present there and on digital? No, massively. I find it's a totally different thing, because when you do walk on somewhere or you are presenting, the first 5 minutes for me is still difficult. So I don't think I've mastered it.
I think it's going to take a while. But no, if I'm in a place where the center of attention is not me, I can flow. However, I've started to kind of do certain things such as water next to mine. But the best thing what I've done is if people are not calling me for property or social media, I won't talk, because
Right.
I will not talk, just because there's nothing I need to revise or do my stats on when I talk. Currently talking about social media and my property background, I've been doing it since what I was 21. That's 17 years now. So when it comes to property, I pretty much, I mean, I don't know it. No one knows. No one knows at all. But I can give you, if you ask me a question, I can give you a response. And that's how I feel confident. So if people are talking to me about other fields, but they want to get me involved, I kind of politely say, in all honesty, I won't be your best guy, because there'll be other people out there that's going to regurgitate something so much better than what I have. And I felt that, okay, they're the two core things where I will do, and it's helping that way.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you're right in that, and I think from your listeners' point, I mean, if there's anything they can take away from our conversation, is that everyone's got to start somewhere, right? Like I said, where I was, and I guess just over the last 10 years of doing Asian Wealth, for me, it's been more of speaking and hosting events and things like that. So, but even when I started, and to be fair, even now, I will always have to take a little shot of something, if a bit of Dutch courage. If I'm doing something big, if I'm speaking in front of a whole load of people, I'm a very, very confident person, but even still, I will still need, and I think because we're all human at the end of the day, everyone needs a bit of something, to do that. But I think the important thing is just knowing that actually you've got to start somewhere, because nobody is perfect. Nobody is, nobody started off as an expert. And I think that's what it is. You have to be able to convince yourself to say, it's okay for me to start and it not be perfect. And I think this is the important thing. I think everyone is looking for perfection.
Yeah.
And there's no such thing, because like we talked right at the beginning, everything is about evolution and growth. So there is no such thing as perfection, but everyone is trying. If I post my picture on Instagram, it has to be perfect. If I'm doing a talk, it has to be perfect. If I'm hosting an event, it has to be perfect. But there's no such thing. There's no such thing.
No. And it's the learning process where it is the best thing as well, because what are you looking for? The one that gets you 1,000 likes? Because once you get there, it's boring for the next post. So yeah, I 100% get it. Talking about kind of likes and stuff, how has social media changed the game, and how has it worked for your businesses?
I think everyone will know that over the last few years, social media, has changed the game completely. If you didn't listen to Gary Vee a few years ago, then you'll definitely know by now, right? So, and it's funny because probably about five, 6 years ago, I remember my head of digital at the time, and he was focusing on our social media as well. And, we would post up and our following was going up, and our engagement was going up. But I'd always say to him, listen, where's the money? Where's the commercial benefit? I don't care if we've got 1 million followers, but if we're not making money from it, then what's the point? I don't understand. But at that point, I didn't understand how the process worked, right? This is before the boom of influencers and so forth, right? So I was very naive and confused in the sense that actually, how do you make money from this? But actually what I didn't realize is the process. And now the process is very, very different. Just on that point, and kind of touching on what you asked me previously as well about that personal persona and having that kind of on social media as well. One of our club members, really, really lovely guy. He runs a creative a digital agency, and he's got about 250,000 followers on Instagram. And I asked him a very similar question, and I said to him, look, why? I said, you're always, you're very avid on social media. You post some great content, and he said to me, he goes, it's so important because the day and age that we live in today, he said that people will look at my Instagram, potential clients will look at my Instagram before they look at my website. And when he said that, I was like, oh my God, I'm the same. When I come across someone or something, I will look, even sometimes companies, I will look at their Instagram before I go to their website,
And then the minute they don't have activity, content, engagement on there, what do you think of them?
I just think to myself, I don't think they're crap. I just think to myself, actually, there's something not right here. Or, in the sense of, I give you an example. Somebody connected me, introduced me to somebody else just yesterday. A friend of mine, she lives up in Scotland, and she introduced me with somebody else on just kind of, on Instagram, you can do kind of a group thing, right? So yeah. She connected us and she said, I think that you guys should have a conversation, blah, blah, blah. Naturally, what anyone would do, I clicked on his Instagram and he had 0 posts, and I was like, meh, and it was, and I know that was very rude and superficial because I don't know what this guy does. I have no idea, right? So I thought to myself, actually, I don't understand why. And I think it's not me being flippant or anything like that. It's very much, and I'm saying it as I think a human dialogue as anybody else would, right? Anybody else would look at that and say, okay, well, I don't understand why has my friend connected me with this person? Because I can't see, they've got no posts. I can't see who they are. I can't see what they do. It's like, it doesn't make sense to me, right? But all of a sudden, what happens is social media is always a window into your world. So you can immediately see who that person is, what they do, what they like. Do they like dogs and cats? Do they post pictures of coffees and ice creams? And, and you get a little window into their world. So I think, and again, going back to what we were talking about is making it human. When you look at, like I mentioned to you, our club member who with the digital agency that he has, by looking at he's the founder of this business naturally, and he has a whole team of people, but he's the founder. So when people look at his profile, forget about the fact that he's got 250,000 followers, forget the fact that he's verified. When you see him post his pictures, they're a certain style. So all of a sudden, you feel that, okay, you know what? If I start working with this is the kind of attention that I will get to. Do you see what I mean? So there's so many different psychological elements of this.
It's more real than someone coming to you for a tender or a CV, because most CVs are BS, right? I had someone ring me, an influencer, and she said, can I send you a CV? I said, no, I don't care what grades you've got. I don't care what you look. If you can deliver, that's what I'm looking for. So only send me a segment of your CV, because there's no interest in it, because the amount of CVs in the past that I've looked at, and I thought, some of them I've known, and I thought, you're giving me BS, so there's no chance of it. But I think this gives people you're right. It opens a door, and kind of, if this is free and you're not telling the world what you're about, and you want to engage with people, but then growing your business, why wouldn't you post? But you're right, we're human, we're nosy, and we are going to look at the following and stuff. And it does, unfortunately, it does have a kind of, it puts you in the picture of, right, where is this person? But you've got to see it as a positive. Are they on it? Are we on the same wavelength? Then we can do something.
I think, you're absolutely right. And I think that the way that this is growing as well, Atish, is that, it's not just us, it's the way that other brands are looking at it as well. So recently I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and he is a modeling scout. And, he runs a modeling agency, and he was saying that, he said that these days, gone are the days when brands would say, I'm just looking for a pretty face. Now, I was going
to say, does he need a middle-aged bald guy?
There's always space. There's always space. Right? But he was saying that actually these days brands are not just looking for pretty faces, because if you want to find a pretty face, there's a million and one. You can find them, not a problem. But now he said that actually they're looking for someone with a bit more substance, whether they are involved in charity or are they involved in, are they, you know, an aspiring actor or actress, or have they done this, or are they involved with something else, you know? So actually that substance is huge. You know, it's not just about posting pretty pictures. It's about knowing, and I'm talking from a different point, because obviously he was talking about brands coming to hire people. But again, I've just, before we jumped on this this podcast as well, I was having a conversation with one of our other members, and she was talking to me about building her personal brand. And I was saying to her, what's the direction? What's the, you know, you want to become an authority in what? What's the direction?
Yeah.
Because if you want to build your personal brand, then there's got to be something there. There's got to be some sort of direction, because otherwise you could just post pretty pictures. And that's okay if that's what you want to do. But if there is a direction of what you're trying to do, whether it's a business, if you're in your business and you're saying, right, okay, this is what we need to do on our social, there's got to be an objective, there's got to be direction, there's got to be goals, there's got to be, you know, it's got to be more than just posting pretty pictures.
Now, you know what, this podcast has been good, and I think a lot of people it's going to help a lot of people. And I'll ask you a couple of things that I wanted to know. Do you know, actually, tell me about, because I messaged you in the week and I said I'm going to mute your Instagram because you're making me jealous when you're going onto these lovely places. But tell us your, because on your Instagram profile you've put Cora Cora as you're the brand ambassador and consultant. What's your role in this, and what's the benefit for you to become an ambassador?
So one of the growth processes for me in my business is that I want to get to a point where I can help other businesses, and I can add value, and businesses that I enjoy working with, and I love the ethos of it. Because again, look, and I'm not digressing from the question, but this will kind of give you an idea. So if you look at retirement, right? There is this you know, preconceived idea of what retirement looks like. You know, you're going to do gardening on a Monday, you're going to go to the gym on Tuesday, you know, you're going to watch TV, you're going to watch Neighbours on Wednesday, you know. So it's like there is this preconceived idea, but the reality is, and I know a few people who have retired early, and it doesn't work like that. So I looked at it a few years ago and I said, okay, what does retirement for me look like? And for me, it was very much, I'd like to have my business, you know, so that I can then focus on what I want to do. So my goal is actually, I want to start consulting at some point and working with different brands that I enjoy. I can add value to what they're doing, but I love what they stand for as well. You know, if you know me and if you follow me, it's not a hidden secret that I love the Indian Ocean. I love Maldives. So, you know, previous to Cora Cora, I was a brand ambassador for another resort for 3 years. So I'd done this. For me, it was very much, okay, which brands can I work with, you know, and which brands can I add value to, and actually who wants to work with me equally, because it has to be a two-way street. Yeah. So for me, it was actually, you know, exploring this partnership. Initially, it was a standard kind of partnership with Founders Club. You know, that's what it was. But the more I got to know the directors on the island, the more I got to know the island, the more I got involved in what their vision was. And equally, the other way around as well, the more they got to know me, the more they got to know what I was capable of. That's when the conversation started, you know. So kind of going back to your question, how does that come about? Or, you know, that's essentially, you know, for me, it's actually, this is something that I want to do. That's something that I want to do and work with.
And you're passionate about it, so it comes off the bat, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, so, you know, like I said, there's certain places and certain, you have to be true to yourself. I love certain things, and I will always shoot for that. You know, I love the Maldives, so I intend to keep working with, you know, brands, that are in the Maldives, because that's where what I love.
Right. Most of my listeners will know there is a final question that I always ask. And that is, where do you see yourself in 5 years personally and in business?
So in 5 years, I see myself pretty much similar to where I just explained. So I would definitely want, so Sunny and I are involved in a few businesses. So I would, from the Founders Club, I would like to have put a team in place where the business runs without me. Sunny, obviously we have a property division, Capital 36, which Sunny looks after as well. So for him, equally the same thing. But I would like to do a bit more on our property side. I want to be involved with a few brands, like I mentioned, with Cora, a couple of other brands. But we are also investing into different businesses as well. Businesses which are either in my lane or in Sunny's lane, where again, we can give strategic growth advice and help them, grow to where they want to grow to. So actually, in 5 years' time, it wouldn't just be a focus on Founders Club and Capital 36. We would have, footprint with Founders Club, Capital 36, but equally, there would be another section where we would be involved and invested into different businesses where we can help them strategically grow. And then the other thing is also consulting for, 2 or 3 brands, which I really, admire and I love working with. So over that's 5 years. And for me, that's
personally,
I'm content, because that also gives me the chance to do what I want personally as well, But yeah, 5 years from now, that's the goal.
Brilliant. I just want to say thank you so much for coming along. You've given us some golden nuggets, and it's good to get advice from someone that's been there, and actually doing it, and actually telling people what they shall be doing, so people can relate to you and kind of make you a relevant person. If you can give your socials on now, then I'm hoping my listeners do follow you and experience your journey whilst being in the Founders Club, the Asian Wealth Magazine. Your Instagram's pretty cool. So yeah, I think that's your main one, but let everybody know what that is.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Firstly, it's such a pleasure to be speaking with you on this, and thank you again for having me. It's been a great hour, just chewing the fat and having these kind of conversations. I really admire and I really love, so thank you for that. The socials are, my personal one is at Mr. KP36. And our club is at Founders Club with an X, so FOUND XRS Club. So yeah, thank you very much, KP. So to all our listeners, thank you for listening. Please do share this on your Instagram stories or any of your socials, and tag myself, Atish Palmer, and KP, and we'll make sure we share it too. This is Atish Palmer, and you've been listening to the Social Connection Podcast.